I would rather acquire something like AMP as opposed to something like Bitcoin as of right now. And the reason being is because even though nothing I say is financial advice, I just kind of feel like when it comes to Bitcoin, it's done so well to the point that why would I enter into it as of right now? If I got into it years ago, then that's totally fine. Of course, hypothetically, that would maybe be good. At least personally, in my opinion, I can't say on anyone's behalf. But as of right now, what could Bitcoin really do? Let's say Bitcoin were to go to the price of $300,000. Let's say, like some people are assuming. That's less than a 3x from here slightly. As opposed to something like AMP, which I feel like due to the fact that it is an altcoin and also because it's not like an altcoin with the multiple $billion in market cap, doing hypothetically like around a 3x, it just kind of feels like maybe it may not have such a hard time doing that. Let's say if we do see a fully fledged type of altcoin season, that's even if we see it because I can't tell the future. But the way you take a look at it is this. Let's say AMP were to go to the price of 20 cents, which is my price prediction for it during this bull run. In theory, the market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be around $17 billion, and that's around a 50x from here. Now, again, that's not such a crazy high market cap in my opinion, because let's assume that something like Dogecoin, which reached over $80 billion in market cap back in 2021. Again, that was years ago. Many people are saying, oh, it could reach like 160 billion or whatever during this bull run. If some people are saying that is around $17 billion in terms of market cap when it comes to AMP, too much to ask for. Now, even if let's say AMP never reached that, let's say just reached the price of 10 cents or whatever, and let's say the market cap's around, $8.5 billion or whatever, that's still over a 20x from here. I don't think that Bitcoin could do even over a 10x from where it is as of right now during this bull run, let's say in the next 6 to 10 months. For instance, I'm not seeing what Bitcoin could reach 10, 15 years later, but do I think it's logical for me to see Bitcoin reach over $1 million during this bull run? I don't think so. This is just my perspective, right? And by the way, I want to say thank you to a Philosophy of Hustle who gave me a super thanks for my quant video. So I just want to say thank you for that. However, even besides that point, why do I think that AMP reaching the price of, let's say, 20 cents isn't too much to ask for? It's because when I take a look at AMP, I just think it's such an amazing project, at least for me, because I like the fundamentals. Now, the reason why AMP was even made in the first place is because when we take a look at the original Flexa coin smart contract, it was not able to be upgraded to meet the new demands that Flexa was looking for. So then something like AMP was created. But keep in mind, AMP was created by Flexa and as well as Consensus. Now, if we take a look at Flexa, it's a crypto payments company. And if we take a look at Consensus, it is a blockchain development enterprise. Shortly before AMP was launched, Flexa actually launched an app called SPEDN, which allowed users to pay thousands of merchants using various cryptocurrencies. However, here's the thing. The special thing about AMP is that, allegedly, right, crypto payments made through Flexa are automatically converted into whichever fiat the merchant wants. So that's kind of like the unique thing that Flexa has over the competition, in my opinion. Let me explain why AMP even has a role in all of this, because people may be thinking, okay, we get it, SPEDN, right? We get Flexa and all this, but how does AMP play a role? Well, let me explain, because let's say, someone makes a purchase at a store using the SPEDN app. Let's say they use a cryptocurrency, right? And again, they make that purchase at that store. Now, when this purchase is made, there could be some possibilities that the transaction could fail. Now, let me explain the reason why. It's because, for instance, during this transaction, let's say there's a chain halt or a hard fork, that could possibly kind of alter the transaction. And then again, if it fails, what happens, right? An amount of AMP that is slightly worth more than the transaction is automatically locked up into a special smart contract. And again, the reason for that is because if the transaction fails, then it will ensure that the merchant will get paid regardless, because of course, it would be troubling if they didn't, right? So the way I view it is that when it comes to something like AMP, it does play a role. It kind of acts as I would assume in my analogy, right? Kind of as an insurance policy a little bit when it comes to this transaction. And this AMP, by the way, is coming from users who are staking their AMP using payment providers who are leveraging Flex's payment protocol. And I forgot to say this, so I had to add it after I made the video, but yeah, besides that point, I'm going to continue on. People may be thinking, okay, first of all, what happens if a lot of transactions keeps failing for whatever reason, and then a bunch of AMP keeps getting sold? Won't that make the price go down and cause basically not a good effect? Now, to my understanding, right, This is just from my perspective. I've never heard or seen like any stories about a failed transaction. Again, this is just from me, right? From what I understand. So I'm just assuming that it's very rare. And even if, let's say, there's like, a bunch of like failed transactions a day, let's say there's like 10 or 20, the amount would be kind of insignificant if we consider just how massive AMP is already. It wouldn't really make like such a drastic difference. And I'm assuming that if, let's say, there was like a bunch a day that keeps happening, I'm pretty sure they would try to fix it in some way. I'm talking about like, Flexa or SPEDN or whatever, right? Or consensus. But again, I'm assuming that, even if, let's say, we do see something like that, hypothetically, I would assume it does get solved very quickly. So even besides that point, when I take a look at something like AMP, I get it. People may think, oh, the use case is kind of bad and all this. But again, I think it plays a very vital role. When I take a look at this bull run, people may think, oh, this bull run's over for altcoins and all this type of stuff. Well, I'm going to take a look back in history because historically speaking, altcoins as a worst case scenario, they usually peak around 18 months after a Bitcoin halving event. So the last Bitcoin halving event, which happened back in April of last year, we had 18 months on top of that. That's around October this year. Now, granted, that's just like a historical scenario. I would assume like it's not going to be accurate entirely this time around because we just don't know, in my opinion. At least I don't, right? Because I can't tell the future. But then it's just like more so of something that I'm going to pay attention a little bit to because even Charles Hoskinson, who is the co-founder of Ethereum and the founder of Cardano, back in November last year, he said 1 to 2 years from then, he could very well see Bitcoin reaching anywhere between $250,000 all the way up to $500,000. And again, that's Charles right there. I'm not talking about Charles Oliveira. I'm talking about Charles Hoskinson here, even though I think they're both very amazing individuals in their own respective fields. But even besides that, again, Charles Hoskinson, co-founder of Ethereum, founder of Cardano, when he says something like that, I'll pay attention. It may not be that he's correct because, again, how can you tell the future, But the way to take a look at it is that even his best case scenario timeline, like a year from November this year, that's like kind of in line with the example that I mentioned before when I showcased the historical example about altcoins peaking as a worst case scenario, which was, maybe around October based on the last Bitcoin halving event. And again, Charles is talking about like Bitcoin, not altcoins, but I'm assuming if like, let's say Bitcoin reaches a minimum in his case prediction, right, 250,000, I'm hypothetically assuming that the altcoin season may be, pretty good, I would assume at that moment. I think it would hypothetically be a lot better than right now, which is why I'm choosing to acquire it over Bitcoin, even though nothing I say is financial advice. And make sure to subscribe if you gain value from this video. I greatly appreciate it. It's been Lee the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.